Hi, I'm Mike Foster, and I'm joined by Steve Hall, co-founder and CTO at Paladin Cloud. It's been over a year and a half since Paladin launched as a startup. I know there's a lot more work that goes into something like that. How far has the product come in the last year and a half? And tell us a little bit more about it.
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Very exciting journey. The journey actually began before we started the company. I was at T-Mobile and I had open sourced a product called PackBot. And our company is really an extension of PackBot. And that was to basically solve the fundamental problems of how do you get DevOps and security people working together on the right prioritized problems at the right time so that they're not just kind of like passing ships in the night. We have two products. We have our open source product, that's our fundamental roots. So on that product, we effectively rebuilt the user interface, we improved a few things. The old repo is getting a little old, and we started building our new community at that point. We also started pushing toward a SaaS product, an enterprise SaaS product that was built on top of the open source core. And we had to modify that open source core to have special extensions for us to go into the SaaS product so we could split some of the features and add more value add on the SaaS side of it. So it's been just technically a great, challenging year. And then through that whole process, we're building a community and acquiring enterprise customers.
Yeah, no kidding. And when you go to the website, it says basically a prioritization engine. You're taking all of this cloud security information and distilling it down so that teams can understand the product. I'm sure all of those integrations over the last year and a half were challenging, like you said. What's it like bringing it all together to, get all that in one dashboard for a security team?
Yeah, it's really interesting how we're approaching the problem. So when you talk about these integrations, you're talking about information from clouds, you're talking about information from DSPMs, you're talking about other intelligence that's coming in. So we break it up into several basic data patterns. So it's really just a giant data mapping exercise is what it boils down to. So you bring in things that are called assets. And these are your things that are hard assets in the cloud. They're not even hard assets, they're virtual assets these days. They're hard assets in the data center. You bring in the findings from other products like CSPMs, DSPMs, and you bring those in and you say, okay, this is either passed or it's failed. If it's failed, it's considered a violation. So then you model all that data in one common data store with metadata associated with each one of the individual products that we're ingesting information from. From there, we can take a look at it and say, okay, prioritize these things. Okay, and we use an AI-based engine to jump into how we prioritize these things, and that gets applied to a given policy. So that's one thing that we know about, and we say, hey, this policy is riskier than that policy. Then we can take that and say, okay, look at all this stuff that's associated with a given asset, call it an S3 bucket, call it an identity, call it a compute instance, whatever it may be. Now we bring those together and say, okay, now the aggregate of all of these risk scores becomes an asset risk score. Now we know what assets are the riskiest in addition to what policies are the most risky.
Gotcha. So you're not only looking at cloud assets, but you're also taking vulnerability information, maybe the application that's running in EKS, and showing all the relationships in with those assets.
Yes,
right?
yeah, we don't show it graphically yet, but we do have a related assets section so that you can see if I'm on compute, what's happening with the vulnerabilities that exist on it, what security groups are associated with it, the identities that are allowed to be on it, that sort of thing.
So you mentioned AI in the product. How are you able to take and give, let's say, valuable insights while also prioritizing customer feedback?
So the AI engine is going to pull together information from various sources, okay? We use generative AI today to pull in information, and we're working on our real-time algorithms because generative AI is a little aged right now. And so we pull it into what we call a policy risk score, and the policy risk score says port 22 is open on a compute instance, it has risk X. S3 bucket's not encrypted, it has risk Y. And it's just a simple stack rank, higher is scary, lower is not so scary, right? Then what we do is we take the policy risk scores and we're aggregating all the findings onto a given resource. So once we have all the findings on these resources, then we can start saying what's the relationship between these resources. And what we're really doing at the resource level is giving broad context. So if you have, let's just throw an example out there. If ACS is finding a deployment is got a certain number of violations related to it, and we find out that the underlying infrastructure has certain violations associated with it. And let's say that the application running on ACS is being monitored by Contrast, and they're finding application securities. We now have those three pieces of information to correlate it together and put it into a clear risk profile that allows you to say, work on this thing first and this thing second.
Yeah, because I find with all the different cloud platforms, different vulnerability feeds, having it all in one place is extremely hard to bring together. I'm sure it remains a challenge. You mentioned ACS, Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security. You mind expanding on what you're doing in that space to bring in all that vulnerability information?
Yeah, we started working with Red Hat about a year ago to basically solve the problem of what's happening in ACS, because you guys do very good cluster security monitoring, and we do very good infrastructure monitoring. So we have the CSPM piece, you have the cluster piece. So we've been gluing that together. We took a three-phase approach to this. And the proof of concept was phase one. We cranked that out pretty quickly. Then we worked on what we called phase two, where we were ingesting all the ACS information into our platform so that we can start risk scoring it and understanding it holistically with the infrastructure. And then we just started phase three, which is we're integrating our managed Kubernetes information is now getting pulled into ACS, so they have a clearer picture of exactly what's happening in their holistic stacks.
Very cool. Is this just because of the partnership with their customers related in this feedback? Is there a specific push from the market?
So I think there's a little of each in that question, but the key here is we both have common customers that are saying, hey, you're giving me this, you're giving me that, why can't I see it in one place? And so we're going to solve that problem together, and that phase two, we've solved it on our side. Phase three, you guys solve it on their side. So, just a huge shout out to all of our design partners, ACS and Paychex. They were one of our key design partners out there. So it's been a great journey. I hope we get it done in Q1 of next year. That's our goal. And then we'll have the full round trip picture between both products.